Smith here for her latest novel, The Weeds, and those both should be great events too. But tonight we are here for Michael Farris Smith, who this is his 7th book. We had counted them up earlier, and Michael moved here after his 3rd book, somewhere around there, and everyone has been a great success and getting better and better. This one is especially creepy, and in the best sort of way. And the reviews have been just outstanding. John Brandon called him an intoxicating literary stylist, and I'm not sure if it gets any better than that. And if he wasn't sitting there drinking a Pabst Blue Ribbon, I would be worried that his head would get too big. But clearly, he's not that sort. He has 2 movies that we're dying to see, and I'm sure going to be as great as his books. And we're just happy to have him as part of our community and to be able to share and celebrate the publication of this latest great novel. So thank y'all for being here, and please help me welcome him. Oh, and his beautiful family is here too. I'm sure support and put up with him and make. Hello, please welcome Michael Farris Smith.
Feels good, because I have to give you a full-on disclaimer, and in case you're a prepper, you might need to go get your shit ready after this, because the last 2 novels I've had come out, Blackwood came out in the first week of March 2020. 3 days later, the entire world shut down. Nick came out January 5th, 2021. On January 6th, 2021, the mongrels stormed the Capitol. So in the next 72 hours, if there's an explosion or a plague or a war breaks out, I have to take full responsibility. So just, get ready. But anyway, so this feels great, man. So I have not done a book event in a long time. And it feels cool to be here. It's a beautiful day and in my hometown. And it's just nice, man. I'm excited. I'm usually really stressed out and anxious on pub day, but I feel good. I feel good. And then the intoxicating literary stylist thing from the New York Times was awesome. About 5 minutes after it came out, I got a text from Lisa Howarth, and she goes, "I think they meant intoxicated literary stylist." So, maybe one feeds the other. Who knows, man? Who knows? But I'm happy to be here. I really am. To see everybody. And even at Lee's event last week, man, it just felt good just to be out and doing this again. So, I'm also not very long-winded. That's probably more than I ever talked at once, so I'm going to talk a little. I'm going to read a little. If you have any questions about anything, I'll answer them a little. And then we'll go celebrate proper. So, quickly, Salvage This World. I had the first sentence of this novel written and just sitting there for months. And I'm going to read it in a minute. But I was just middle of the day or middle of the night. I don't know what it was. And there was just this image of this young woman with a kid on her hip, staring at the thunderclouds and the wind blowing and the dust whipping around. And I just loved the image, and I wrote it down. And it just sat there. But I felt like there was a novel there. Or I felt like there was at least a potential to write another sentence there, which I eventually did. But that's kind of how things start for me quite often. It's just always that thing's kind of burning in your brain that you can't get rid of. And for me, it was this very first thing. And I knew she was in trouble. I knew the kid was in trouble. I knew they were alone. And that seemed like fertile ground for me. And then I wrote the first couple of chapters. And she comes to this moment where she's got to decide what she's going to do, and she doesn't really have anybody, and she finds this payphone, and she picks it up and dials, and even as she's dialing, I'm not really sure who she's dialing, and then you're writing the sentence, and the phone rang, and there's someone picked up on the other end, and I remember I just wrote her saying, Daddy, when the other voice picked up. And I knew right then also it was going to be about fathers and daughters, and I'd never written about fathers and daughters before, even though, particularly because I have two lovely ones sitting right there. And I got to admit that really, it really scared me and put me back some. And I almost started to back away from it. But it really feels like every novel I've written has that moment where I feel like backing away from that thing that kind of makes me a little uncomfortable or makes me nervous. And I've realized that's kind of the sign of that's the road you need to be going down when you're out of your comfort zone and you're feeling something that maybe you haven't felt before artistically. And David Bowie has a great quote about that. He's like, I mean, we've all swam in the ocean, right? You know when you're out in the ocean and you just keep moving a little further out and moving a little further out, and your toes can barely touch. And Bowie has this quote about when you're out in the ocean like that and your toes can barely touch, and all of a sudden like a wave takes you and your feet disappear from the ocean floor. And what do you feel immediately? You're like, oh, like your breath is taken away a little bit, and you're a little bit nervous. You start looking around for like sharks and jellyfish. He said, when you get there as an artist, like, that's when you know you're in the right place. Like, you're uncomfortable and you're unsure about things, and you feel like you're in a different spot than you were. That's unfamiliar. That's how I felt when Jessie picks up the phone and says, Daddy. Not father, not dad, not hey, not Wade, which she calls him pretty much the rest of the novel, but she says Daddy. They haven't seen each other in several years, and there's a lot of animosity between them, as you'll see. And the flip side of that was when he hears her say Daddy and she doesn't say Wade, he knows, like, she's in trouble, you know. So that I knew then that this was going to be about a father and a daughter, and that was horrifying and terrifying and also kind of exhilarating, too, in the same moment. The other thing that hit me is that I always thought I would approach rivers again one day, which is my first novel about the Gulf Coast, with hurricane after hurricane after hurricane wiping it out until the government says we're not going to govern it anymore, and they abandon the region. It's, really kind of dystopian, I guess. But I always felt like I would come back to that terrain at some point, but not like as a sequel or anything like that. But really kind of off to the side, kind of indirectly. And this felt like that with the opening of her staring at the storm clouds and just the desperation of it all right out of the gate. And this was me like coming kind of back toward that rivers terrain, but it's like 6 or 8, 10 years before it gets that bad, And these small South Mississippi and South Louisiana communities are already starting to erode and people are not coming back, and the people who are there they don't really have any infrastructure, and there's like very little law and very little, hope, I guess is the way to put it, but for whatever reason, they're not leaving. And that's what we see again. And all you got to do is drive across Louisiana, Mississippi, and like Arkansas now, and you see that, these little places where it's just it doesn't look good, man, and storms come and people leave and there's really not much of an economy and so forth and so on. So, it's kind of those two things that drove this story, and I was really excited about it, and here we are. So what I'm going to do is I want to read two brief places, just the opening, and then I want to read you a section about Wade, the father, and all the fun he's having here in a minute. So, this is where it began, and, this is where it goes. But this was the thing. She stood bathed in twilight, the dust in her hair and a kid on her hip, and she stared at the approaching storm as if trying to figure how to wrangle the thunderheads and steer them to a distant and parched land where desperate souls would pay whatever ransom she demanded. The acres of sugarcane cut to nubs surrounding the house. A dry autumn turned into an unpredictable winter, and then 11 days ago he left, and she'd seen no one since. It was a mile walk along a dirt road that separated the acreage. Another 8 miles to walk to the nearest telephone, but even if she wanted to bundle up and make it, she wouldn't know who to call. He was gone, and he had taken the car and the cigarettes and every dollar except for the stash she kept hidden beneath a floor plank in the closet. She had finished the last of the whiskey 3 nights before. The milk had run out yesterday. Jessie stared at the storm, and the wind began to blow, and dust clouds rose like souls awakened, and she listened to the wind and welcomed the sound of something else. She shifted the child from one hip to the other and pointed out at the lightning and said, "Look at the light. See the light?" One side of the sky was thick with storm clouds, and the other side of the sky was wrapped in a rust-red belt that bled into the horizon like an open wound. And the child lifted his small hand and pointed at the light, but it was not the lightning he saw, but a gathering of headlights approaching in the distance. The thunder roared and the engines roared, and she turned and ran for the house, setting the child down on the porch and hurrying for the bedroom. Her footfalls hard against the floorboards, and her breath in quick sucks as she took the pistol from beneath the mattress and grabbed the set of keys from the dresser drawer that he had always told her to grab if she had to make a run for it. And then she hustled out and scooped up the child. The headlights growing closer and splitting the dusk as she hurried around the house and along the beaten trail through the high grass that led into the woods. She ran and the child bounced in her arms, and she had just reached the edge of the woods when she looked back to see the vehicles skid to a stop right in front of the house, a pale and powdery cloud rising around them. She heard the engines cut and the doors slam behind her, and then she heard the shouts coming in her direction as the last of the twilight seeped into the earth. They called out as they chased her into the woods, and the child squeezed her neck and he held on, but he did not cry as she ran. She had gone far into these woods before, but never far enough to know if there was anything on the other side, and she was seized by the thought that she may run right over the edge of the earth, and that she and the child would plummet soundlessly into nothing. That thought was interrupted when a shotgun fired into the night, its echo ringing through the trees. She pushed harder, squeezing the child close to her, praying not to run over the edge, or if there was such a thing, praying that her fall would be brief and painless. Another shotgun blast, and then another. She knew they were looking for him. She knew there was a fine damn reason he had never returned. She knew she and the child could never go back to the house. And she knew she would have to keep running. Thank you. That's the first chapter. So, how many people have children? Yeah, you're going to understand this. How many have daughters? Yeah, you're really going to get it. Sorry, girls. It's just the way it is. You'll understand one day. So, Jessie goes, she hasn't seen her father a couple years. She leaves under very bad circumstances, runs off with some guy, right? Her and this guy come back with a baby, or a toddler. Wade doesn't even know she's had the baby. That's how bad things are. So she comes back, and they're in a shitload of trouble, a lot of trouble, which he kind of knows, right? But they haven't told him yet exactly what's going down. He's also managed to sober up while they're gone because he doesn't like being drunk and having rifles around the house because he's in a bad mood a lot. So he gets rid of the rifles and he sobers up. But then they show up with the kid, and he hates the guy already. The guy shows up out of the blue also. So Wade goes out and gets drunk, right? Well, so he's hungover, and he comes back, and Jessie says, "Look, I know you want to know what's going on, and we're going to tell you. He's like, I don't even want to know anymore. Like, I asked you. You didn't want to tell me. I'm done. She's like, no, sit down, Wade. We're going to tell you everything. And they tell him, and it's way worse than he could have possibly imagined, right? And this is his reaction to it, hungover, standing in the kitchen that morning. We have Jesse and Holt and the little boy just playing in the floor. Wade's hungover, and they tell him, he goes. This is all one paragraph, by the way. It's one page, so if I take a few breaths, it's all right. That's what I'm doing. Wade was staring at the linoleum when he said, I guess the only thing I really have to say is, what in God's name do you expect me to say? And before you answer, I would just rewind this whole thing and add, I ain't even going to look at you, Holt. I don't want confirmation that you knew what kind of shit you were in when you drove off with my daughter and didn't bother to tell my daughter about it until you knew she wouldn't turn back. And I ain't even going to add that neither of you could figure out when Jessie was pregnant that living in rundown houses and hiding from ravenous lunatics was not the decision of the same. And beyond that, I ain't even going to ask you why in the living hell are you hanging on to these keys anyway, because apparently the only magical element they possess is the ability to get you killed. So I say all that to say I don't know what the hell you want me to say. Because I'm guessing you know all that, or either you shouldn't be sitting here, but you should be sitting front and center the next time that Hellfire Revival pops up its tent, so you can empty your pockets and nod your heads like the rest of the goddamn holy rolling sheep. And just let me say I don't know nothing about what helps the hunters find the hunted when they really want to find who they're looking for. But I'm guessing if you had that baby in a hospital and you gave them your real names, and you have to give them your real names to have a baby in a hospital, that means whoever is hunting you has your names and the name of everybody you're connected to. And if your name ever pops up anywhere, they know it. I've seen enough television shows to know that. So besides me not saying any of that shit I just said, I honestly to God don't know what you want me to say. Jessie stood and walked to the counter. She picked up the bottle and swig, and she looked at Holt and said, I told you he'd understand. I told you all the parents would get that one. That's all I'm going to read. You know, I'm very proud of this novel. I'm very proud of the landscape of Mississippi that I get to keep working in. I'm very proud to be a local. It's been good for me and my family. I love this bookstore. Seeing all the familiar faces and town folk, man, I just dig it. I just love it. And yeah, an intoxicated literary style. Whatever, I'll take that too. But it's been great, man, being here. Lee spoke about this last week also. And everywhere I go, I get asked about Oxford. I mean, I swear, it used to be asked about Mississippi writers, like wherever you go, why there's so many, and all that. And I don't know. I mean, there's some reasons. My answer's different every time. But now, like, I largely get asked about Oxford, you know. I was in L.A. last weekend at the LA Times Book Festival, which was very cool. And I swear the second question was, well, what's it like being a writer living in Oxford, you know? And it's fun to talk about, you know, it really is. So it's cool. And I've really missed doing this. It's been really since 2018 since I got to unwind and do this. That was the fighter. And so, yeah, I'm crazy as hell proud of this book. I don't know what questions you could have because nobody's read it yet. It just came out today, right? Which is always weird. But, I mean, if you got any questions about other stuff, I'll try to answer that, Ralph.
I got a question about setting.
Yeah.
So it says South Mississippi. Is this closer to Desperation Road territory, or?
Yeah, it actually is same as Desperation Road, same Macomb, Magnolia, Louisiana line. You know, I had the thought out of the gate that I really like how in Blackwood and the Fighter had characters from one novel cross into the other. I loved how that fell together, and I kind of thought with this one, this would be the one that married Desperation Road and Rivers together. And the Rivers thing was kind of clear And I kind of kept waiting for that moment when one of the characters from Desperation Road might show up, but it never really did. It just never really felt right. So, but I was already in that town, in that landscape on that Mississippi-Louisiana line. So, as Curtis Wilkie would tell you, he thinks that's fertile ground and wonders why more people haven't written about it. So, I'm using it as much as I can. But yeah, it's the same setting from Desperation Road, just things have gotten worse. Yeah. Anybody else? Yo, way back there.
So, who is your favorite Oxford writer?
That would be Ace Atkins, clearly. I mean, but I usually just go by alphabetical order when people ask me. Bill's my second favorite. I think I'm my favorite. There's so many, man. There's so many to choose from. It's cool. I had somebody, a writer that I was on the panel with, she lives in Houston, and I was just kind of talking about it. She's like, man, I've been trying to get a writing group together in Houston forever. And I'm like, good luck. If you're ever in Oxford and want to come join one, just be at City Grocery. Pretty much any day of the week, but mostly on Thursday. So yes, Ace, you're my favorite. Yeah, Lee.
How is writing all these screenplays you've been working on, how is that affecting your fiction? Or is it affecting your fiction?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it is. Like, writing a script especially an adaptation, is a serious practice in economy for obvious reasons. You're taking 300 pages and you got to get it in 95. And it's got to be really all the good stuff. So it's really a practice in economy and efficiency, hitting those images and picking out the correct dialogue to drive the thing forward. And I feel like it has impacted it. I don't know specifically, but the very first few readers of this talked about how it felt more stripped down than like maybe the other stuff. And kind of how the language was like really concise. And I mean, I wrote the first half of this before we filmed Rumble Through the Dark, and I wrote the second half after. So there was a couple of adaptations I wrote kind of in the middle of doing this, or right kind of around it. So I feel like if it's having any effect, I think it's a good effect because it makes you more efficient and conscious of like hitting that thing, hitting the nail on the head like right then instead of dancing around it. I don't feel like I've really danced around a whole lot in the past, but I think the script stuff really like makes you aim, which is always good. I try not to think about it, when I'm writing prose. It's kind of a strange thing now, but it's cool. But yeah, if it's helping, I think it's a good thing. Say less and say a lot with fewer words. Hopefully. Yeah. Anybody else? Rumble Through the Dark, by the way, we're going to have a big-ass party here in Oxford for it. When it comes out at the end of the summer, we're going to have a screening at the Lyric. We're going to have a big time. It was originally scheduled for April. Got pushed back to the end of the summer. But we are going to have a screening at the Lyric a few weeks before it. And we're going to have just a fun, good old time. It'll be good. And no, Michael, Corey, Bella Thorne is not coming. I'm sorry. Anything else?
I have something.
Yes.
Okay, so I cheated. I have an advanced reader's copy. Do you want to give them a teaser about where you went with this? Because it's certainly more than just a father-daughter story.
Yep. I mean, like, what kind of teaser? Like, what are you talking about?
Elser,
yeah.
that.
The Temple of Pain and Glory?
Yeah. It's pretty weird.
So, Hope, just real quickly. Holt, Jesse's guy, the way before he even comes to her, he wakes up one day with his face down in a gravel parking lot behind the bar, and he looks up, and there's this traveling revival setting up tents, like in this field out behind this old bar, and he just kind of mindlessly wanders over, and he comes under the spell kind of this woman named Elser, who is probably about 5'2", 86 pounds, probably about 65 years old, and she's just an intimidator somehow. And she is the preacher of the Temple of Pain and Glory, is what they call the church. And they're going across Mississippi and Louisiana, these little dilapidated communities, and promising them salvation and promising the hope that these storms are going to end if the wicker basket is filled up the way it should be. And we all know that works, right? I mean, that's not a new story. People getting it, saying things to get money in the offering plate, and then doing bad things with it. So yeah, the Temple of Pain and Glory. The title of when I had to name that thing, it seemed good because it was like both. It was like the hellfire and damnation thing that at least. I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and I've been told many times, if you do that, you're going to hell. I don't know what else to say about it. That's just kind of the way I learned, right? And the Temple of Pain and Glory is making that promise, unless you drop money in the basket, right? And these are people who are beaten down. They've been there after hurricane after hurricane. They're struggling. The economy's gone. They're hand to mouth, and here they are. And this is what's happening. And then there's this other thing called the bottom. There are these keys, the keys that Jessie grabs when she takes off running. Holt has told her, if you ever have to haul ass, be sure you grab those keys because they're important. And then I had to figure out what they belong to. Which I did eventually. But yeah, so there's other stuff going on, man. It's more about daddies and daughters,
But there's a mystery there too.
Oh yeah, because I didn't know what was going to happen either.
Here's your mystery.
I rarely do until I get there. Yes, Lynn?
I just want to say, everybody needs to read this right now because we all need to talk about it. There's so much.
Lynn's killing me with her questions about the end.
And yes, and so I want to talk to all of y'all about it. Just buy the book and hurry up, and then I'll be back to the grocery in a few days, okay?
That's a pretty fair sales pitch. Thank you. Yes,
So when you're writing and you're telling a story that's coming to you, do you write quickly? Or are you like struggling, with everything?
Well, I think on the days when it's coming to you, it goes pretty quick, I think most writers can speak to this. On those days when it's really coming, you look up at your word count and the time you spend on it, you're like, oh, how did I do that? And then other day, like I try, when I'm in the groove, I'm trying to hit 1,000 words a day. And I swear to God, sometimes I'll look up and it's been 47 minutes and I've got it. And I'm like, what just happened? And I stop. I don't keep going. I'm like, if that's it, I'm going to stop and let the well fill up again for tomorrow. And some days you sit there for 4 hours and you're staring at the word count. It's 108 words and you're going, I'm never leaving this place today. So it's really different. I also think that's the reason why you got to, and every writer talks about this, the importance of habit, being there every day, even if it's just for a little while, because that keeps the tool sharp and it keeps the imagination rolling. And some days it's nice, some days it's not so nice, but the really cool thing about it to me has always been this feeling that when I walk into a room, when I walk out, there's going to be something there that existed that didn't before I walked in. I don't know. That sounds very, I don't know what it sounds like, but that's just, some days that's what drives me, I'm walking in here, when I leave, I'm going to have something that wasn't there before, and that's kind of a cool thing, Yeah. Yes.
Can you discuss the journey of how your novel became a movie?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll stand up on a table in the bar tonight and talk about it because it is a zoo, man. I don't know how a movie ever gets made. I swear to God, I've said this to Bria a million times. I don't know how anybody who's working in the movies is eating. I don't know how they. I don't know, man. And So I'll tell you about Rumble Through the Dark. We go to Natchez and we start filming, right? I've been waiting to tell this story for so long. But we are recording, right?
Would you like for me to stop?
No, that's okay. I'll change the names to protect the innocent. So, we go to Natchez, we start filming this thing. First of all, we were ready to start filming in fall of 20. Still couldn't do it because of the pandemic, so we kept pushing. We start filming in fall of 21. We got everything we need. We got a great cast. We got et cetera, et cetera. We go down to Natchez and we start filming. Well, we filmed for 4 days, and then the Delta variant hit, and we had someone get it. Someone who happened to be involved with a lot of the crew and everybody and a lot of the actors, and we had to shut down. We had a COVID outbreak, and we had to shut down for 3 weeks. And an indie movie, that's like the death blow. And we really thought it was over. You know, our directors, God bless them, and producers, they went out and they started asking all their friends, everybody they could find, just to borrow any amount of money to invest in this movie to please keep it going. Because we had shot for 4 or 5 days and we saw that we felt like we had something really cool. And to abandon it at that point would have been awful, especially after waiting that long. So they managed to raise the money to keep us there for 3 weeks. Well, in the meantime, half our crew got so sick they had to leave. So when it got time to shoot again, we were like a skeleton crew. So we had to start calling crew in, and some of them were literally walking up the day we started shooting again. And so that was kind of an issue, and we had less of a crew. We managed somehow to keep all the cast. They all stayed together. They stayed with it. We start shooting again. 4 days after we started shooting again, a freaking hurricane hit. And we had to shut down for 5 more days. And again, we were wondering if we could make it because we'd already borrowed all this extra money. And we got all this extra money to try to make it. We sat through the hurricane. Then we started shooting again. And it felt like we were going to make it. And then the last night of shooting. First of all, me and Sabrina and the girls moved to Natchez for this. We thought we were going to be there for 5 weeks. We were in Natchez for almost 3 months. It was nuts. People thought we had moved. We get to the last night of shooting, and you know how it is. We're like in the October now. We were supposed to be done like middle of September. You know how it is in October when that first cool thing blows through and blows out the summer, and it just feels wonderful, like the storm or something. This storm comes through. We're set up. It's an outside shoot. It's a night shoot. And about 1 a.m., the biggest lightning storm you've ever seen comes through Natchez, Mississippi. We're out on the side of a highway by an abandoned gas station that we've made into the Alligator quick stop from the fighter. And lightning just starts snapping. Tents start blowing off. Equipment starts getting demoralized, and I remember we were all just sitting in our vehicles watching this, and there's nothing you can do. And we were just all on the walkie-talkie, we were all going, of course. Of course. What else would happen on the last night of shooting? The thing blew through, the temperature dropped about 40 degrees, but we somehow managed, we had to be done by daylight, and we somehow managed to get done by daylight. And, it's kind of a miracle, you know. I think that's an extreme story, but it's also kind of a miracle, and so many emotional swings. Like when we shut down the first time for COVID, me and the girls packed up Natchez and we drove back to Oxford, and I don't think for 4 hours, I don't think any of us said a word, because you work so hard to get to that moment, and then you start, and then it's like somebody just hits it with a club. And I came back to town. We were here for like a week, and I stayed at home. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't let anybody know I was here. I didn't want to see anybody. I was so depressed. And about that time, they said, we think we're going to make it. Y'all come back. And so we come back. That's not really sure what you wanted to hear with that question. The real question is, a producer optioned the book. He went out, and strangely, after like 6 months, directors had read the book separately from him and approached me, not even knowing it was option. So they called him, and they kind of pitched themselves to him, and they put it together like that. And then they hired me to write the script because I was attached to adapt. And so we all kind of got together and got to work, which led up to this insane thing that happened later. But I don't think there's any real rhyme or reason to it. It happens different every time. The second time on Desperation Road was very different. Very different. We didn't have any hurricanes or COVID outbreaks. That was positive. Yeah.
Where was Desperation Road filmed?
Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Anything else? Well, I'm ready to go have a drink. I really thank everybody for coming. I'm serious, man. It feels good. Thank you.